Have you guys seen this movie? It's called Colossal, and it is starring Anne Hathaway and Jason Sudeikis, directed by a guy named Nacho. It's currently on Tubi if you want to watch it. The description is Gloria is an out-of-work party girl forced to leave her life in New York City and move back home. When reports surface that a giant creature is destroying Seoul, she gradually comes to the realization that she is somehow connected to this phenomenon. And the poster says, what is the subtitle? All she could do was save the world. All right. It's Nacho Vigalondo. Nacho Vigalondo. He's got lengthy director credits. He's got like 30-something director credits. He did one of the VHS movies right before this. I really enjoyed the first VHS movie. I don't remember the other ones. I think there were a couple of awesome moments in the later VHS movies too, but I can't remember. I am definitely going to watch those for this Halloween season. If you haven't seen them, they are a lot of fun. So he's apparently also done some TV stuff. I don't think I recognize much of any of this. But anyway, this is a relatively low-budget feature film, I would guess, that came out in 2016. Anne Hathaway, obviously, is a pretty massive star. And Jason Sudeikis is very well known and liked. He's an enjoyable guy. And that was one of the things that was most surprising about this movie, is that he's actually a legit actor. He actually puts in some serious work in this movie. He's not just being, oh, I'm the funny guy. He was trying. He was putting in a legitimate performance that could occasionally be scary as a person, that was sometimes over the top, but most of the time I actually enjoyed him as an actor. So I wouldn't mind seeing him in more of these kinds of roles. Anne Hathaway, she is a consummate professional. She does her job. Whatever movie she's in, she's going to put the work in. The cinematography looked fine. It at least, it at least fit the subject matter and fit what was going on in the movie. It wasn't anything that, it's not super interesting, but it does fit, it seems, what's going on here. The tone of this movie is a mix, but it is a little bit more drama than it is comedy. I expected more comedy out of it. The beginning is a little more comedy, but later on, it really goes more serious. And also the thematics are serious. They're taken seriously. It's not a matter of, oh, this is all a joke or anything like that. So yeah, anybody who hasn't seen this, like I said, it's on Tubi if you want to watch it. Now, I would say if I'm just giving just a surface level review to tell you whether you should or not, I'm saying you could pass on this one. I'll give you the description that you need. Jason Sudeikis, like I said, is totally worth watching in this, honestly. And it's kind of a funny concept, but there is something annoyingly vacuous about it too. So I don't know if it's necessarily that important to watch it. But anyway, so I'm going to go on, just describe it in detail. Not much detail, actually. I don't have that much to say about it, but it does have some ideas that I wanted to bring about. I'll just give you the basics. So it's a woman, and she is living in New York City, and she's got a boyfriend there, but she's out partying all the time, getting completely wasted, and then showing up at 4 a.m. That's probably too early for most real party people. I don't know what the standard is, but maybe we'll say 9 a.m. she gets back. And her boyfriend is super unhappy about this. This has apparently been happening a lot. In the trailer for this movie, they just plain old reveal. Even on the poster, they just reveal what the whole underlying idea is about the movie, which I do wonder if it would have been more interesting or impactful. But they do show it pretty early in the movie, so I don't know. Anyway, so she's out getting drunk all the time, and he kicks her out. The boyfriend kicks her out, says, you can't stay here anymore. You don't have a job. You're just out drinking all the time with random people. I don't want you here, just get out. So she doesn't really have a whole lot of options and decides to return back to her hometown, where she has a house that was like the family house, and it's empty, but there's nobody renting it at this point. So she could just stay there, just put up a mattress and stay there. Now it turns out she meets her old friend from this place, Jason Sudeikis, who owns a bar. And of course that the spirits are her weakness, so it makes perfect sense. And he's kind of representative of that in this capacity. So she goes to the bar, and she tries initially to avoid getting back into that pattern of drinking and like the blackout drinking and getting wasted and waking up and who knows where and all of that, but eventually succumbs to it. And then when she wakes up the next morning, she sees on the news that there was this giant monster that showed up in Seoul, South. Did I say Seoul? Seoul, isn't that the Seoul, South Korea? Sheol is like the underworld. I'm so terrible at pronouncing anything that's not cheeseburger. Anyway, so this monster, this giant monster shows up, and it doesn't really attack anything. It just kind of lumbers around a little bit and causes a little bit of destruction, and then it disappears. And it happens every day at 8:05 in the morning. And it has coincided with her returning to this place. So you eventually learn that in her drunken state, she shows up at this little playground that she used to play in when she was a kid. And whatever she is doing in that little playground, the giant monster thing that materializes out of thin air is doing that in South Korea. So she could just be, stumbling around a little bit or fall over or something like that, and it could cause immense destruction back in South Korea. Eventually she figures this stuff out because she will then do certain actions and then watch on the TV later and see that the thing did the same actions that she was doing. So she's trying to figure this whole thing out. Along with the people that she's around, Jason Sudeikis and his friends at the bar, she eventually reveals to them what's going on, and then he steps in and he turns into this giant robot that is supposed to be fighting, this giant monster. So they have little back and forths. In South Korea, where they're seeing it, it's these two giant monsters going at it, but back in her hometown, it's just these two people at their little childhood playground. So it turns out that they remember sometime later that they were in this event thing that happened when they were kids, and this is the only other time this thing was cited, and they were both there, and these monsters came out, and then now it's recurring because she has returned to this place. So Jason Sudeikis, out of jealousy at one point, because she hooks up with one of his friends. He hires her, too, to work at this bar, but she hooks up with one of his friends. So out of jealousy or whatever, he starts abusing this power. He keeps showing up to the place and using it. She says she's not going to do it anymore because she doesn't want to hurt people, because at one point she was just swinging her arms. She had a helicopter, and the helicopter exploded, so people died, so she's worried about that. But he's not hearing it because he is jealous and acting out, and also, hint, hint, representative of the whole idea of alcoholism. So it keeps happening. She tries to go and stop him. They'll get into physical fights while they're in this thing. And so it looks like the robot and the giant monster are fighting back in South Korea. But in reality, it's just them fighting each other. She slaps him and he's like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. And then she punches him and then he's like, all right, no punching. There's definitely none of that. But she keeps trying to, so he gets physical with her, pushes her down. And then it escalates from there. They end up back at the house and they're like breaking chairs over each other and all this other stuff. So eventually the boyfriend shows back up in her hometown and he's just going to see her. There's this whole subterfuge about it. Oh, he had business there, but really he's just going to see her to try to get her to come back to New York City so they can try again. Jason Sudeikis has a conflict with the boyfriend. He does some crazy stuff in the bar. And then they have a final fight wherein Anne Hathaway's character takes a plane to South Korea and shows up in the same place. So she turns into a monster back in her hometown while she's in South Korea, and he's the giant robot in South Korea while he's just a normal guy back home. So she uses this to her advantage and just grabs him and flings him into the stratosphere, which was kind of funny, honestly. But so that's the resolution of that conflict. She returns to New York City, and then she gets to overcome, this character flaw that she's got, obviously. So why talk about this movie at all? So it's got, the thematics are actually embedded in it relatively well. It's an interesting thing because really it's just an exploration of alcoholism and how to deal with alcoholism. The idea is that, you get totally drunk, you get wasted or whatever, get blackout drunk, and then you do things that are extremely destructive that you don't realize that you're doing. And you don't want to do those. If you realized what you were doing, you wouldn't do them. But you don't, so it happens, and the stumbling around and the minor things that you do can cause a lot of damage to a lot of people. So Jason Sudeikis' character is, of course, he owns a bar, and it's about the childhood and all that. There are some thematic things that don't make a whole lot of sense, like the fact that it started in her childhood. There could have been some absentee fatherism that I missed as I was going through the movie, but I only watched it once. But the thing is that Jason Sudeikis is always egging her on and trying to push her to drink and push her to do more and push her to show up at the place and be the monster more in South Korea because he's representative of that alcoholism that's trying to get her to do destructive things. So she has to overcome this and realize that she doesn't want to be this anymore. She doesn't need to use this as a crutch, whether for employment or anything else. The whole party thing and the get drunk thing and all of that is destructive to people she cares about, and she needs to stop doing it. So that's what's symbolized by her flinging Jason Sudeikis across the planet. So you can have these thematics. There are some weird things about the way the character acts and the way that they use the thematics at certain points, because one of the things that really sets off the Jason Sudeikis' character is that she sleeps with one of his friends. Of course, it doesn't make sense for the alcoholism to be pissed off by that. Like, the alcoholism doesn't care who you're sleeping with. So thematics don't really work in that context. Also, like I said, that they started this whole thing when they were children. That feels like a tacked on aspect just to make it more sci-fi thrillery. Like I said, I could have missed something about her father being an alcoholic, and so it started in childhood but didn't really blossom until she got older. That absolutely could have been in the movie. And that would have tied it in, at least to some degree. So it would have been fine. But this is one of those movies where the thematics are a little too simplistic and the storytelling is a little lacking. So there could have been a lot of turns in this where you got some complexity in the character and the way that the characters interrelate, but really you just have his friends who just make jokes. They're just there for the jokes. And when he gets mean, and that's it. And there's the physical, beat 'em up thing, but it seems like that's a really reductive way to express this kind of conflict. There could have been more complexity to that back and forth, like her struggle with alcoholism, rather than just, this kaiju fight in South Korea. It could have still been that fundamentally, but there could have been some more things about like smarts and things like that. I think Anne Hathaway needed more to do as a character. I understand it's billed as a comedy, so you don't want to get too complex with character traits and aspects of their psyche and all that stuff, but it was just, I don't know, there just wasn't enough comedy to make it a satisfying comedy, and there wasn't enough drama to make it a satisfying drama, so it ended up just somewhere in the middle of both of those, which left me unsatisfied. So that was the entirety of the movie. Like I said, I want to see Jason Sudeikis in more things where he has to do more acting. He was actually a little terrifying when he was angry. He's a little harsh. Well, it's like, okay, I believe this. I believe that he can do this. I like seeing Anne Hathaway in pretty much anything. There's that one guy from the Ballad of Buster Scruggs. He's enjoyable. But like I said, his friends were pretty much just empty shills for the occasional joke and to be foils to be able to sleep with Anne Hathaway's character. So anyway, there's more to consider related to the psychology of somebody who would design and write and create this kind of a movie and what it actually says. But I'm not going to go too deep into that. There are plenty of other movies that give us a more complex insight into that question. So this one, fundamentally, it's alcoholism. It's a conflict with alcoholism, how it gets worked through, and how you come out the other end. And it's fine, but it doesn't have enough to it to make it worthy of a higher echelon kind of movie, if you know what I mean. Anyway, yeah, so that is Colossal. If you've seen it, let me know. Otherwise, yeah, that's it. All right, bye.